Dear Wolf King, please marry my mother. She says men create extra laundry, but you look house-trained. Alpha King Leofric Vane stopped the royal council so abruptly that two rival lords accidentally agreed with each other. Then he studied the wax crayon bride, read the name Rosalie Arden, and realized the little silver wolf holding her veil had his green eyes. For several heartbeats, the council chamber held only the hiss of the fire and the faint scratch of a quill. The royal secretary had continued writing from habit. He finally noticed the silence, glanced up, and broke his quill against the parchment. Leofric did not notice. The drawing filled an entire sheet of expensive petition paper. A black wolf stood beneath a crooked yellow crown. Beside him, a brown-haired woman held a soup ladle instead of flowers. Between them waited a small, silver-gray wolf in a purple cloak. A stuffed animal with one button eye appeared to be conducting the wedding. Below the picture, the child had listed her conditions. The Wolf King must bring honey cakes. He must wipe his boots. He must not leave wet fur on the floor. He must understand that Gerald would live with them after the marriage. The final line had been pressed so hard that the charcoal had torn the paper. Mom says no. I have overruled her. Leofric read it twice. Across the long oak table, Lord Penwick cleared his throat. The old counselor had survived 3 border disputes and 1 unfortunate marriage. He still looked unprepared for a royal proposal written in purple crayon. Your Majesty, Penwick ventured, shall we continue discussing the Western Toll Bridge? Leofric lifted his gaze. The counselor sat down so quickly that his chair squealed. No, the king answered. He turned the letter over. For the first time in 43 deliveries, the little artist had supplied a full name and a location. Tansy Arden, 7 years old, Willowmere Village. Please arrive on Thursday before supper because mother makes onion pie on Thursdays. It was Tuesday. Leofric opened the shallow drawer at his right hand. 42 pictures rested inside, flattened between clean sheets of paper. They had arrived over 2 years inside mixed royal petition bundles. One had even been misfiled among winter tax requests. None had named a sender's village. Each had been signed only by Tansy, who is also a wolf. The first showed a black wolf eating an entire pie. The second showed him losing an argument with a goose. In the 7th, he wore pink boots. By the 19th, he had acquired a silver-gray companion who asked whether kings got lonely. Leofric had asked his officials to trace every letter. They found 3 district depots, 6 market towns, and chapel routes covering dozens of villages. One clerk recalled a child who lived somewhere near a tree. The kingdom contained several million trees. The search had produced nothing. Still, Leofric had kept the drawings. At first, he told himself they amused him. Later, he stopped lying to himself and simply refused to explain. Now he had the explanation. Rosalie Arden. Her name moved through him like a door opening in a house he had sealed for 7 years. She had been an unranked Omega copyist, almost invisible to the nobles whose lessons she prepared. Leofric remembered brown hair escaping its pins and ink on one cheek. Her laugh always arrived when dignity needed it least. He also remembered waking one autumn morning to learn that she had gone. No farewell, no demand. No body recovered from the river road, though his guards searched for months. Only an empty room and a blue ribbon beneath her pillow. Leofric looked again at the child's eyes. Green was not rare among wolves. That exact dark ring around the iris was. His father had carried it. Leofric carried it. The child had drawn it in every picture of herself. She was 7. Rosalie had vanished 7 years ago. The arithmetic took less than a breath. Accepting it took longer. His wolf rose inside him, silent and enormous. The animal did not offer proof or caution. It gave him one fierce certainty. Ours. Leofric folded the letter along its existing crease. His hands remained steady because kings learned early how to keep their hands steady. Halbert, he called. His beta entered from the side door. Halbert was broad, gray at the temples, and gifted with the expression of a man expecting administrative pain. Leofric handed him the proposal. Halbert read the first line. One corner of his mouth moved. "Do not," Leofric warned. "I moved nothing, Your Majesty." Leofric informed him that his face had attempted treason. The beta finished reading. His amusement disappeared when he reached Rosalie's name. He had known her too. Halbert studied the child's picture, then the king. "When do we leave?" "Now?" "The council is still assembled." Leofric glanced at 12 nobles who were pretending not to listen. Penwick had turned a map upside down to improve his disguise. "They accidentally solved the toll dispute," Leofric replied. "End the meeting before they recover." He left through the side door with the letter inside his coat. Behind him, Lord Penwick whispered that the king had received a marriage proposal. Another lord asked whether the bride owned land. Halbert shut the door before anyone could explain that the negotiator was 7. Willowmere lay a day and a half south by ordinary carriage. Leofric reached it before noon on Wednesday. He rode through the night with 6 guards, Halbert, and a box of honey cakes secured more carefully than the royal seal. Rain followed them across the low hills. By dawn, every cloak smelled of wet wool, horse, and poor decisions. Willowmere appeared between 2 wooded slopes. Its cottages had mossy roofs, narrow gardens, and chimneys releasing pale ribbons of smoke. A stone bridge crossed a noisy stream. Beyond it stood a small schoolhouse with blue shutters. Leofric slowed his black stallion. A line of children emerged from the schoolhouse carrying wooden tablets. Their chatter scattered sparrows from the hedge. At the center walked a woman in a faded green dress, balancing a basket of chalk against one hip. Rosalie. 7 years changed a face in quiet ways. Her cheeks were leaner. Fine lines appeared beside her mouth when she smiled at a child. Her brown hair was braided and pinned without courtly decoration. Yet Leofric knew the angle of her head. He knew the decisive stride. He knew the hand that steadied a boy before he stumbled from the step. His wolf pressed against his ribs. Home. The word hurt more than anger would have. A small girl followed Rosalie outside. She wore a red coat and carried a stuffed gray wolf by one leg. One button eye stared at the road with permanent suspicion. The girl looked up. Green eyes met his. Leofric forgot the rain, the guards, and every speech he had prepared during the ride. Tansy did not. She shoved the stuffed wolf into Rosalie's basket and marched toward the king. "You are early," she announced. Rosalie turned. The chalk basket slipped from her hands. White sticks bounced over the wet stones, making the schoolyard look briefly struck by very small lightning. "Leofric," she breathed. Tansy planted both hands on her hips. "His name is Wolf King. I put it on the envelope." Rosalie's face lost all color. Leofric dismounted. Mud accepted one polished boot with enthusiasm. He stepped free, leaving dignity and half his heel behind. Tansy watched the struggle. "Gerald says that is not a strong beginning." Leofric pulled his boot from the mud. "Gerald may revise his opinion after the honey cakes." The child's eyes widened. She looked at the box Halbert carried, then back at Leofric. "You followed the instructions." "I am occasionally capable of government." Rosalie remained beside the scattered chalk. Shock passed over her features, then fear, then the controlled calm he remembered too well. She sent the other children home with the assistant teacher. Her voice never shook. Only her fingers betrayed her as she gathered broken chalk into the basket. Leofric moved to help. Rosalie caught his wrist before he touched the ground. "Chalk washes out," she murmured. "Royal gloves probably require a committee." The old dry humor struck him with painful familiarity. "2 committees," he replied. "One blames the sheep." For half a second, her mouth nearly softened. Then Tansy pushed between them and inspected their joined hands. Rosalie released him as if burned. "Interesting," the child observed. "Nothing is interesting," Rosalie told her. Tansy recognized that denial as the usual warning before something became interesting. Halbert coughed into his fist. The guards found urgent reasons to examine the stream. Rosalie rose, clutching the basket. Her gaze settled on the honey cakes. What did she write? Leofric removed the folded letter from his coat. Tansy snatched it first. She held it against her chest with the solemnity of a treaty keeper. "Private royal business." Tansy May Arden. The full name worked. The little girl's shoulders descended. She handed over the letter. Rosalie read the opening sentence. She closed her eyes. Rain tapped the schoolhouse roof. Somewhere near the bridge, a duck made a sound of deep personal disappointment. I can explain, Tansy offered. Rosalie opened her eyes. Can you explain 43 letters? The child considered this. Not before lunch. Leofric watched Rosalie reach the name at the bottom, watched her understand that he now knew where she lived. More importantly, he knew whom she had hidden. Fear sharpened her scent. He hated that he could still cause it. We need to speak, he said quietly. Rosalie folded the letter with great care. Yes. Tansy raised one finger. I should attend. This concerns my future stepfather. No, both adults answered. The girl looked delighted. You already agree on things. Rosalie's cottage stood behind the school garden. It was small, warm, and orderly enough to suggest its owner distrusted surprises. Leofric entered as the largest surprise available. He removed his muddy boots at the door. Tansy checked the floor, nodded once, and marked something on a wooden slate. Tansy awarded 1 point. Rosalie told her to stop scoring the king, but the child needed some method for deciding whether to keep him. Gerald handled character while she assessed household habits. Halbert made a choking noise behind the honeycake box. Rosalie directed him and the guards toward the village inn. Her tone allowed no debate. Halbert looked at Leofric, received a small nod, and withdrew. The king remained in his stockings beside the door. 7 years earlier, Rosalie had once seen him order 6 armed alphas from a room with one look. Now he waited for a 7-year-old to approve his feat. The absurdity threatened her composure. Fear won. Rosalie sent Tansy upstairs to wash for lunch. The child objected that Gerald's stuffing bunched in water until Rosalie clarified which hands required washing. The child collected her wolf. Before climbing the stairs, she pointed at Leofric. Do not propose until I return. Mother says yes too slowly. Her footsteps crossed the ceiling overhead. Silence settled in the kitchen. The cottage smelled of onions, beeswax, damp wool, and the lavender Rosalie tucked into cupboards. A pot simmered on the iron stove. Children's copy sheets hung from a cord near the window. Leofric saw evidence of 7 years everywhere. A height chart cut into the pantry frame. 2 cups drying beside one plate. A tiny red mitten near the stove. He had not been present for any of it. Rosalie set the chalk basket down. Her hands were clean now, but white dust remained in the creases of her knuckles. Rosalie began by denying knowledge of the letters. Leofric believed her without hesitation. His quick answer unsettled her. She had prepared defenses during the short walk home. He removed one before she could raise it. Leofric drew out the kitchen chair. He did not sit until she did. Is she mine? Rosalie stared at the grain of the table. No graceful answer existed. She had imagined this moment in nightmares, arguments, and rare weak hopes. None had included him arriving with pastries after being called house-trained. Yes, she answered. The word changed the room. Leofric's breath left slowly. His face stayed controlled, but the hand beside his knee closed into a fist. Outside, water rushed beneath the bridge. A cart rattled over stones. Ordinary village sounds continued while 7 missing years opened between them. Leofric confirmed that Rosalie had known about the pregnancy from the first month. Pain moved through his eyes before anger covered it. Leofric accused her of allowing him to believe she was dead. Rosalie had intended only to appear gone, but his court supplied the darker conclusion. He described searching riverbanks, border roads, and burial lists. Each place landed like a stone. Rosalie had known he might search briefly. She had not allowed herself to picture the details. Leofric leaned forward. His voice stayed low because a child moved above them. For a year, every report describing an unidentified woman might have contained Rosalie. Leofric had opened each one, expecting the worst. Rosalie pressed her palms together beneath the table. She had carried a child his counsel intended to take. Leofric argued that those men did not rule him. But Rosalie remembered his silence while they planned a child's life. The memory returned with terrible clarity. Rosalie had been copying lesson schedules in the gallery outside the council chamber. Inside, Lord Penwick's predecessor discussed a possible royal heir. The mother, if common, would be housed elsewhere. The child would belong to the crown. Public affection created weakness. Separation created discipline. Leofric had not objected. The following night, someone fired an iron bolt through Rosalie's window. It struck the wall above her bed. A message tied to it warned the king's favorite that royal seeds required royal soil. She had been sick that morning. Suddenly, the reason felt like a death sentence. Leofric's jaw hardened as she described the bolt. He asked why she never told him about the bolt. Rosalie described the steward who arrived before dawn with a removal order bearing the royal seal. Leofric had ordered guards, followed by a move to his private summer house at North Watch. He intended to join her after the council session. Rosalie had received only the command to leave court. Rosalie stared at him. He continued carefully. I thought distance from the palace would protect you while I found whoever fired the bolt. I should have asked. I should have explained before anyone touched your belongings. 3 months after Rosalie vanished, a dismissed palace guard confessed to firing it. The former Lord Chancellor had ordered the intimidation after leading the discussion about separating royal children from common mothers. Leofric stripped the Chancellor of rank and banished him. He also changed royal custody law, forbidding separation from a fit parent merely because of birth or status. The guilty men no longer held power, but Rosalie had been too well hidden to learn any of it. The explanation removed a present danger. It did not erase the failure that allowed the danger to grow. Rosalie returned to his failure to object when the council discussed taking a woman's baby. Leofric had not known a real child existed, but agreed that ignorance made the idea no kinder. His answer came without defense. His gaze lifted to the ceiling. The floorboards creaked beneath small feet. At 26 and newly crowned, Leofric believed silence gave him time to decide. Everyone else treated it as permission. Losing Rosalie taught him the difference. Rosalie had spent 7 years hating a man who never explained. Now he explained without asking her to erase the harm. That was inconvenient. Anger had supported her through childbirth, winter fevers, and lonely midnight shifts beneath the trees. She did not appreciate him removing its easiest pieces. I went to North Watch, Leofric added. Your escort arrived without you. The steward swore you fled on the road. I did. Rosalie had slipped from the carriage at a crowded harvest fair. She cut her hair, traded her blue dress for a widow's gray cloak, and traveled east under her mother's surname. The steward died 4 winters ago, Leofric said. I cannot ask whether he altered my order. He did not need to alter much. You had already decided where I would live. Leofric accepted the strike with a small nod. That was wrong. She had expected fury. An apology proved harder to resist. Above them, something heavy rolled across the floor. Rosalie glanced at the ceiling. That will be the chest she is forbidden to climb. Should we intervene? If the noise stops, we intervene. Continued noise means she is alive and ignoring me. For the first time, Leofric's mouth shifted. It was not quite a smile. She remembered how rare his smiles had been and hated that she still knew their beginnings. The object rolled again. Tansy called that everything was intentional. Rosalie raised her voice. Wash your hands intentionally. I am considering it. Consider faster. The water basin splashed upstairs. Leofric asked what Tansy knew. Rosalie had told her only that her father was a wolf from another pack who did not know their location. The Wolf King came from disguised bedtime stories. Rosalie changed names and places but failed to change his personality. He wanted to know how the fictional king behaved. Rosalie regretted the answer before giving it. You protected everyone and forgot to sleep. You frightened bad men and lost arguments with one particular goose. Leofric denied losing an argument with any goose. Rosalie trusted the bird's memory instead. Footsteps hurried down the stairs. Tansy entered with wet sleeves, dry hands, and the expression of someone who considered the distinction unfair. She climbed onto her chair. Gerald occupied the fourth seat. Tansy asked whether they had agreed to marry. Rosalie reported only a ban on future secret proposals, which Tansy considered unrelated. Rosalie finally demanded a complete account of the secret correspondence. Every second Thursday, the village school practiced formal petitions. Rosalie taught the older pupils while her assistant supervised the beginners. The children carried unsigned exercises to a locked chest outside the chapel. A royal courier collected the pages. At the district depot, clerks combined petitions from dozens of chapels and discarded the local wrappers before sending them north. Most children requested repaired roads, fewer geese near the well, or a holiday from arithmetic. Tansy addressed every exercise to the real Wolf King in the style of Rosalie's stories. Her assistant considered the devotion harmless and praised the child's unusual commitment. The first 42 pictures gave no surname or village. By the time palace clerks separated them from real requests, the bundled routes could not identify one school among dozens. Tansy added her full address only when she required Leofric to attend the proposed wedding. The green eyes had a simpler explanation. 2 years earlier, Tansy found a painted miniature inside Rosalie's old sewing box. It showed a younger Leofric beside Rosalie at a summer feast. His eyes were painted clearly, and his name appeared on the back. Rosalie had believed the miniature lost during their flight. Tansy had hidden it inside Gerald's cloth coat because her mother looked happy in the picture and sad whenever the palace appeared in a story. Leofric listened without interrupting. No magic had guided the drawings. A curious child had found one unguarded memory, connected it to the lonely king on copper coins, and built her own road between them. Tansy's scheme had required charcoal, chapel access, and 2 years of adults underestimating a determined 7-year-old. Rosalie confiscated neither the chalk nor the child. She did inform the school that imaginary pen pals required parental approval. Leofric placed the honey cakes on the table. Their glaze shone beneath crushed almonds. Tansy inhaled. Her resolve weakened visibly. Rosalie allowed 2 cakes. Tansy tried to recruit royal authority for a third, until the possible consequences and pillow cleaning persuaded Leofric to support existing policy. Tansy made another mark on her slate. They ate beneath a silence that was never truly silent, because Tansy occupied it. She asked whether kings chose their own crowns, whether palace toilets had thrones, and whether Leofric had ever bitten a rude minister. He answered each question with grave attention. Yes, but crowns were designed by jewelers. No, that would be confusing. Not since becoming king. Rosalie nearly dropped her spoon at the last answer. Tansy demanded details about the bitten minister. Leofric had been 6, and the man took his cake. Tansy called the response reasonable. Rosalie disagreed, although the minister had returned the cake. Tansy declared that effective government. The king's quiet laugh filled the little kitchen. Rosalie had heard that laugh only a handful of times. It was warmer than his public voice and younger than his face. Tansy stared at him, delighted by what she had caused. Something tightened behind Rosalie's ribs. She rose to collect the bowls. Leofric stood and volunteered to wash the bowls. Tansy's charcoal hovered above the slate. Rosalie gave him the dishcloth and warned that the examination was corrupt. Leofric had understood that when he brought cakes to the examiner. He carried the bowls to the basin. His shoulders nearly blocked the window. The ruler of 9 packs rolled his sleeves and inspected a spoon as if it had presented military terms. Tansy whispered to Gerald, loudly enough for the next village to hear, "He is very house-trained." Leofric washed one bowl and placed it in the drying rack. Rosalie picked it up. Grease still shone along the rim. Rosalie addressed him with ominous formality and displayed the greasy rim. His title could not intimidate the onions. although Leofric noted that onions intimidated several counselors. She made him wash it again. He did. Tansy awarded him another point for obedience. The domestic comedy could not hide the question waiting beneath it. When the dishes were clean and the cakes reduced to crumbs, Leofric sat across from his daughter. He did not reach for her. Rosalie noticed that restraint. Leofric asked Tansy for permission to visit the next day. She reminded him that he had come to marry her mother. Rosalie had not agreed, but Leofric still wanted to know the child. Tansy studied him with unsettling concentration. Her green eyes narrowed exactly as his did during negotiations. "Do you like children?" Leofric took longer with this question than he had with biting ministers. "I like one child very much, already." Rosalie's throat tightened. Tansy demanded identification. Leofric named the child, questioning him while he stood in his stockings. She checked beneath the table, apparently confirming his lack of boots. Tansy approved another visit, but prohibited counselors because Gerald disliked committees. Leofric bowed to the stuffed wolf and accepted their common ground. At the door, he put on his boots. Rosalie stepped outside with him while Tansy watched through the glass. The rain had stopped. Wet earth and wood smoke scented the cold air. Water dripped from the eaves in a patient rhythm. Rosalie warned that one lunch invitation did not make him an accepted father. She also prohibited any attempt to take Tansy to the palace. His expression hardened, then eased through effort. "I will not take her anywhere without your agreement." The promise addressed the past as much as the present. Rosalie asked what he wanted. Leofric looked through the window. Tansy had pressed Gerald's face against the glass. "Tomorrow," he answered. "After that, I want the next day. I will ask for them one at a time until you trust me with more." The patience in his voice frightened her more than a royal command might have. Commands could be resisted. Patience entered through smaller openings. Rosalie offered 1 hour the following afternoon. They settled on 90 minutes. From inside, Tansy shouted that he had forgotten Gerald's goodbye. Leofric returned to the door, bowed formally to the stuffed wolf, and wished him a pleasant afternoon. Tansy beamed. Rosalie watched the Alpha King cross her garden in muddy boots. Halbert emerged from behind the hedge with 6 guards who had made a poor attempt at invisibility. For 7 years, she had built a life around one fixed fact. Leofric Vane would never find them. Her daughter had overturned that fact with purple crayon and a chapel petition chest. Worse, Rosalie could not decide whether to confiscate the crayons or thank them. Leofric returned the next afternoon carrying no crown, no sword, and a wooden box of colored chalk. He also brought Halbert, who remained outside the garden because Gerald had prohibited counselors. Tansy opened the door and announced that the king was 3 minutes late. Leofric blamed a goat on the bridge and admitted it had questioned his authority. Rosalie appeared behind her daughter. Willowmere goats recognized only turnips and violence. Since Leofric offered neither, negotiations had failed. Tansy marked his slate before allowing him inside. Leofric suspected the mark was negative. The promised hour and a half began with schoolwork. Rosalie had lessons to prepare, so she placed Leofric at the table beside Tansy and handed him a page of sums. "She reverses her 6s, Rosalie explained. "Do not give her the answers." The Alpha King had balanced winter provisions for 9 packs. He had settled border claims involving rivers that moved every spring. He expected arithmetic to provide neutral ground. Tansy distrusted the first problem. A farmer gave away 4 of 12 apples without explaining his motive. Leofric suggested generosity, then bruised fruit. The first seemed suspicious and the second rude. Rosalie sharpened a quill near the stove. Her shoulders moved once with a hidden laugh. Leofric returned to the arithmetic. The farmer retained 8 apples, along with damaged relations between neighbors. Tansy wrote the number 8. Her 6 faced the correct direction because she had avoided using 1. The next sum concerned hens. She demanded to know whether the fox had legal representation. By the final question, Leofric had learned that primary arithmetic contained more ethical danger than royal taxation. Rosalie collected the page. Every answer was correct. Your method is inefficient, she told him. The student appears satisfied. Tansy was drawing a tiny lawyer beside the fox. I am preparing an appeal. After lessons, they walked to the river meadow. Tansy ran ahead with Gerald tucked beneath one arm. Frost had silvered the grass, though the afternoon sun warmed the path. Leofric kept his pace beside Rosalie. She needs to know, he said. Rosalie watched Tansy leap over a puddle and land in its center. I know. I will follow your judgment about when. Rosalie chose the following evening, not that day. He accepted this, though disappointment tightened his scent. Rosalie wanted Tansy to have one more ordinary night. After learning the truth, the child would measure every memory against the father missing from it. Leofric's gaze remained on the child. She may not want me inside them. The possibility cost him something. Rosalie heard it beneath his even tone. Tansy had wanted a father since she learned other children had them. She simply pretended the empty place at family dinners could be solved by requesting a taller chair. Why? The chair beside her was empty during family dinners. Taller furniture was easier to request. Leofric stopped walking. Rosalie regretted the honesty, but not enough to withdraw it. You missed things, she said. So did she. We cannot repair that by pretending it did not hurt. No, his answer was quiet. Ahead, Tansy shouted for the Wolf King to judge a bridge. She had placed 3 stones across a trickle of water. Gerald lay on the far bank like a stranded traveler with poor survival instincts. Leofric crouched beside the construction. What loads must it bear? Tansy listed Gerald, herself, and ideally a live chicken as required bridge traffic. He tested the largest stone. It wobbled. For 20 minutes, King and Child reinforced the crossing with flat rocks and packed soil. Rosalie watched from the bank. Leofric never took over. When Tansy placed a stone badly, he asked what the water might do instead of correcting her. The finished bridge held Gerald. It held Tansy. The hypothetical chicken remained unavailable for inspection. Tansy awarded Leofric 2 points. 1 point rewarded the bridge. The other rewarded Leofric for never suggesting that girls could not build. Leofric's face became cold in the particular way that meant someone elsewhere had earned his anger. Leofric demanded the offender's name. Merrick Dale was 8 and smelled like boiled cabbage. Rosalie denied that odor proved poor character, but Tansy considered it supporting evidence. Leofric offered to speak with Merrick. Rosalie caught his sleeve before an alpha king could threaten an 8-year-old over a stone bridge. Leofric called it a discussion and defended the guards as structure. Tansy considered the matter. Merrick cries when the baker runs out of jam buns. I can manage him. Leofric nodded solemnly. Then I respect the local authority. That evening, after he left, Rosalie found Tansy adding a black figure to the family picture above her bed. Rosalie asked whether Tansy liked him. The child valued how Leofric listened to the end, unlike grown men who answered in the middle. His hair still needed help. Then Tansy returned the question. Rosalie sat on the bed. The straw mattress gave a familiar sigh beneath her. Rosalie admitted that she once liked him very much. Tansy asked about extra laundry while coloring the black figure's boots purple. Rosalie confirmed an astonishing amount, but both acknowledged that he washed the bowl again. The child nodded as if this confirmed a promising medical sign. On Thursday, Leofric arrived precisely on time. He had apparently negotiated with the goat by bringing a turnip. Tansy gave him back the point he lost. The afternoon's crisis began when Rosalie received word that the miller's wife had gone into labor early. The village midwife needed someone to watch the miller's 3 sons. Rosalie put on her cloak. Tansy was still at school, where the assistant teacher could keep her until dusk. I can collect her, Leofric offered. Rosalie paused with one glove half on. He saw the refusal forming. Halbert will come. We will walk directly here. I will not take her beyond the village. Every detail answered a fear she had not spoken. Rosalie finished pulling on the glove. Tansy knew the way. The red cart was forbidden because its seller cheated children and anyone who looked royal. How does someone look royal? Her gaze traveled over his fitted black coat, polished buckles, and posture trained by generations of portraits. It is a mystery. He almost smiled. Rosalie returned 2 hours later to an unusually quiet cottage. She smelled hot bread, apple peel, and the faint smoke of a candle recently extinguished. Leofric sat near the hearth with Tansy asleep against his chest. Half her hair was braided. The other half stood outward in sections, as though several nervous birds had attempted to nest and change their minds. Gerald occupied Leofric's knee. A ribbon tied the stuffed wolf's ears together. Halbert sat by the window reading a school primer upside down. "What happened?" Rosalie whispered. Leofric looked down at Tansy's hair. A tactical defeat. The child had complained that her braid was coming loose. Leofric tried to repair it. Then Tansy insisted Gerald deserved equal treatment. "How many hands did you believe a braid required?" Rosalie asked. "At one point, all of Halbert's." The beta kept his eyes on the inverted book. "I was prohibited from discussing the operation." Rosalie crossed the room. She expected Tansy to wake when she reached for her. The girl only curled closer to Leofric, his arm tightened by instinct, supporting her back. Wonder and terror shared his expression. He looked like a man holding something precious enough to alter gravity. Leofric murmured that Tansy had asked whether he had children. He answered only that he had recently discovered he might. The answer was honest without stealing Rosalie's part of the truth. "Tomorrow," she repeated. Leofric nodded. Tansy opened one eye. "I am awake." All three adults froze. "How long?" Rosalie asked. "Since the tactical defeat." The child sat upright. Her ruined braid leaned left. "Are you my father?" Leofric did not look at Rosalie for rescue. He gave the child the respect of a direct answer. "Yes." Tansy stared at him. Rosalie heard the fire settle and the wind rub one branch against the roof. She could smell Tansy's uncertainty, sharp as crushed leaves. Tansy needed to know whether he had known her location. Leofric told her he learned it yesterday. "Did you want me?" Leofric's control broke only in his eyes. "Before I knew you, I kept every picture you sent. Now I know you, and there is no measure for how much I want you." Tansy absorbed this. Her fingers stroked Gerald's worn paw. Tansy tested him by asking about the goose picture and the one where he wore a dress. Both remained in his desk. Halbert looked suddenly fascinated by the primer. Tansy's mouth trembled. Rosalie braced for tears. The child threw both arms around Leofric's neck. Her forehead struck his chin with a hard click. He held her while blinking through pain. Leofric invited her to call him father. Tansy requested permission to use Wolf King whenever he became unreasonable. Rosalie's face would provide the official measurement. Rosalie covered her eyes. Leofric's laugh moved beneath the child's arms. He pressed his cheek to her disordered hair. "That seems fair." Tansy hugged him again. This time, he lowered his chin first. Fatherhood changed Leofric's schedule before it changed his title. He moved into an abandoned hunting lodge 1/2 mile beyond Willowmere. The lodge had 2 cold bedrooms, 1 suspicious chimney, and a roof that leaked directly above Halbert's pillow. Leofric refused to return to the palace. Each morning, messengers arrived with royal papers. Each afternoon, they departed with decisions, damp cloaks, and increasingly personal opinions about the goat on the bridge. At 3 o'clock, Leofric went to the schoolhouse. Tansy met him with a new assignment. On Friday, he repaired a window latch while she explained that Gerald required a royal salary. On Saturday, he learned to make oatcakes and produced 6 objects suitable for defensive walls. On Sunday, Tansy asked him to shift. They stood in the meadow beyond Rosalie's cottage. Bare branches clicked beneath a pale sky. The river ran dark and quick behind the reeds. Rosalie reminded Leofric that he did not have to shift that day. He removed his shirt because Tansy had already waited 7 years. The child examined his chest and discovered aloud that kings had nipples. Rosalie choked on cold air. Leofric confirmed that reliable histories supported her discovery. The coins omitted that detail because the treasury remained conservative. Rosalie turned away, but not before he saw her laugh. It warmed him better than the weak sun. The shift rolled through his body. Bone and muscle changed with practiced speed. Black fur replaced skin, thick across his shoulders and back. Moments later, an enormous wolf stood in the winter grass. Tansy stopped laughing. Leofric lowered himself slowly. His wolf could look across a horse's back. Beside a small child, he resembled a moving wall with teeth. Tansy took one cautious step. Rosalie stayed near enough to catch her, though her hands remained loose. The girl reached for Leofric's muzzle. Her palm rested between his eyes. Recognition widened her face. "It is you," she whispered. "Not the king from coins. Not the stranger who arrived with cakes. This was the black wolf she had drawn 43 times without knowing why he mattered." Tansy buried both hands in his fur. Leofric's wolf released a low sound. It was too rough to be a whine and too tender to be a growl. The child climbed onto his front leg and ordered him lower. Although he was already lying down, he flattened himself further. The king flattened himself until his belly met the grass. Tansy climbed onto his back. Rosalie immediately rejected the idea. Leofric turned his head toward her. The wolf's pleading eyes became less effective when attached to 600 pounds of bad judgment. Tansy defended him as stable. Leofric rose only to his elbows. Rosalie allowed 10 walking steps on flat ground. He took 12. She counted 12. The black wolf looked innocent. It was an expression his face could not support. Rosalie accused him of teaching Tansy that kings cheated. The child defended 2 extra steps as modest corruption. Leofric coughed. In wolf form, it sounded dangerously like laughter. When Tansy finally climbed down, she had black fur on her red coat and triumph in every step. Leofric shifted behind a willow screen and returned, wearing trousers with his hair loose. Rosalie studied him 1 second too long. He noticed. Leofric asked whether his royal anatomy remained historically accurate. Heat climbed Rosalie's throat. Their daughter stood 6 feet away, though she was currently explaining taxation to a frog. That detail did not improve his question. His smile arrived fully this time. It changed his severe face and disturbed several defenses Rosalie had maintained for years. She handed him his shirt and ordered him to cover the national records. The warmth in his eyes remained while he dressed. That evening brought the first difficult question. Tansy sat between them at the kitchen table, cutting parchment dolls from Rosalie's ruined lesson pages. Gerald had been appointed royal chancellor and wore a paper chain. "Why did Mother hide me?" she asked. The scissors stopped. Rosalie had known the question would come. Knowledge did not make it lighter. Rosalie explained that fear had driven her. People near Leofric sometimes hurt what he loved, and distance had seemed like safety. Tansy asked whether Leofric had hurt Rosalie. He did not soften the truth. He made choices without asking, which gave Rosalie reason to fear he would choose for Tansy too. When the child asked whether he still would, Leofric admitted he was trying not to. Tansy demanded a firmer answer. He promised never to separate Tansy from her mother or take her anywhere without discussing it with them both. Rosalie spoke before fear could silence her. She had also chosen for Leofric by deciding he would not want them safely enough. Hiding Tansy from him had been wrong. Tansy put down the scissors. Tansy concluded that both adults had been foolish. They agreed, Leofric with emphasis. The simple explanation relieved her. Both adults stared at her. Tansy returned to cutting a crown because foolishness was easier than a complicated reason. Leofric leaned back. "Your confidence in us is humbling. Gerald will supervise." The stuffed wolf received a second paper chain. For another week, Leofric learned the shape of Tansy's life. She hated boiled carrots, loved thunder, and slept with 1 foot outside her blanket. She could read far above her age, but treated punctuation as an insult to momentum. She had not shifted yet. Most wolf children changed between 6 and 9. Tansy had felt her wolf stir during the last full moon, leaving her feverish and restless. Rosalie had guided children through early signs before, but she had never guided her own. Without a pack's shared presence, first shifts could be frightening and physically harder. Leofric did not use this fact as leverage. That restraint made Rosalie trust him more than any argument could. Instead, he asked permission to bring Mistress Valea, an older shift guide, to Willowmere. Leofric explained that the guide had helped dozens of children and could teach both parents. Being large and alarmed did not qualify him to guide a first shift. Rosalie agreed. Valea arrived with a round face, a calm scent, and a bag containing blankets, dried fruit, and no frightening instruments. She spoke with Tansy in the meadow. Then she examined the faint moon mark developing along the child's spine. Valea predicted a first shift within 2 months, or sooner if Tansy felt a strong pack call. Tansy objected to an event she could not schedule. Her wolf had not studied calendars, but she intended to teach her. Afterward, Leofric walked the old guide back to her carriage. Rosalie followed while Tansy showed Halbert how to improve Gerald's paper crown. Valea quietly confirmed that the child was healthy. Tansy reached for both parents' scents when nervous. If they intended to remain apart, uncertainty could make the shift harder. The carriage left behind the smell of damp leather and crushed grass. Rosalie worried that Tansy expected marriage. Leofric blamed Gerald's supposed licensing authority and defended his own behavior as respect for local government. Rosalie gave him a flat look. Leofric's humor faded. He would not use Tansy's shift to force them toward the palace, though he honestly admitted wanting them there. At least he did not hide desire inside concern. The palace offered Valea, young wolves, guarded woods, and enough pack presence to steady Tansy. Willowmere offered a good school and a goat that defeated the royal escort. Both places contained advantages. Rosalie looked toward the cottage. Through the window, Tansy had placed Gerald's crown on Halbert. The beta sat motionless beneath it, defeated by cloth and affection. Rosalie allowed a 10-day visit while keeping the cottage and their freedom to leave. She and Tansy would share rooms. There would be no court presentation, announcement of an heir, or council questioning. Leofric accepted every condition. Halbert could frighten counselors from a distance, although his paper crown might improve or damage the effect. Rosalie should not have laughed. She did, and Leofric watched as if the sound mattered. The space between them changed. He stepped closer, slowly enough to leave her every chance to move. His scent carried pine, cold air, and the restrained warmth she remembered from nights beside the palace fire. Leofric admitted that he missed her laughter. Rosalie reminded him that he had missed many things. He had grieved every absence he understood, and more he had not known about. Rosalie's heart struck hard once. From the cottage, Tansy opened the window. "Are you flirting?" Rosalie stepped back so quickly that her heel entered a flower bed. Leofric noted that Rosalie was standing on the rosemary. Tansy correctly observed that this was not a denial. Halbert appeared behind Tansy wearing Gerald's crown. He closed the window with the weary dignity of a man ending a diplomatic incident. Rosalie freed her boot from the rosemary. 10 days, she reminded Leofric. His gaze held hers. "I will make careful use of them." Tansy entered the royal palace carrying Gerald beneath one arm and a turnip beneath the other. The stuffed wolf was expected. The vegetable required explanation. "For the bridge goat," she told the gate captain. "He has influence." The captain looked at Leofric. "Do not underestimate local politics," the king advised. The palace rose from a wooded ridge above the capital. Gray towers caught the late winter sun. Smoke drifted from hundreds of chimneys, carrying the smells of cedar, bread, and forge fires. Rosalie had once known every stairwell. Returning made her body remember before her mind agreed. She anticipated the turn near the old chapel. She stepped around a cracked stone that had been replaced 6 years ago. Leofric noticed every hesitation but did not touch her. Tansy had no such restraint. She seized Rosalie's hand with one fist and Leofric's with the other. Then she pulled them through the main doors as if personally delivering a captured monarchy. 40 servants waited in 2 formal lines. Tansy stopped. The servants bowed. She bowed back so deeply that Gerald struck the floor. Tansy whispered a concern that all 40 servants might be staying for supper. Leofric explained that they worked there, along with many others elsewhere. The size of the staff convinced Tansy that he needed a wife because he had lost control of the house. A maid made a small squeaking sound. Halbert converted it into a cough by glaring kindly in her direction. Leofric led them upstairs to a family wing overlooking the western gardens. Rosalie found 2 connected bedrooms, a sitting room, and a small chamber already crowded with drawing supplies. No royal nursery waited. No guards stood inside. Their luggage remained unopened so they could leave without asking anyone. Leofric had listened to every condition. Tansy ran from window to window hoping to see the whole kingdom. Rosalie identified 3 chimneys and a very judgmental statue. The stone queen outside did appear disappointed in the architecture. Tansy chose the smaller bed because its canopy made a better cave for Gerald. She placed the turnip on the pillow. Her mother removed it. Tansy defended the turnip as a diplomatic gift. Her mother assigned it to the table. Leofric moved it beside the wash basin as neutral territory. Tansy accepted the compromise. Before supper, Leofric showed Rosalie the Eastern schoolroom. It had once been a copying chamber where junior clerks prepared lessons for noble children. She had worked there at 19, earning little money and frequent ink stains. The room looked different now. Low shelves held readers and wooden puzzles. Broad tables replaced the slanted copying desks. Afternoon light reached every bench. One old desk remained beneath the window. She crossed to it. A cluster of initials marked the underside, carved during an especially dull lecture on royal lineages. LV complained too much. The letters were still there. She asked why he kept the old desk. He denied knowing about her vandalism and also denied that the rocking furniture was broken. She pressed the uneven corner. The desk rocked. He claimed it developed character under pressure. She gave him the look Tansy used before writing on her slate. The king finally surrendered. He kept the desk because she had sat there. Her hand rested over the carved initials. After her disappearance, Leofric closed the copying chamber. The servants later needed a classroom, and sensible Halbert opposed preserving an entire room as a monument to misery. The king allowed everything to change, except one desk. Children of resident staff studied there. Noble pupils attended separately because adults argued about curriculum and seating. Rosalie noted that children cared little about seating until adults taught them to care. On the nearest table, Rosalie found a stack of copy sheets. The lessons were neat, expensive, and lifeless. One described 14 generations of dead nobles before reaching a single active verb. No child would willingly read the lifeless copy sheets. Several tutors called suffering discipline. Rosalie prescribed copying their own lessons 100 times. Leofric invited her to change the lessons during her visit. Rosalie recognized both a sincere offer and an attempt to make the palace useful enough that she stayed. He admitted both motives. She refused decorative work, so he offered real work with opportunities to offend real tutors. The offer tempted her. That made it dangerous, but not wrong. Rosalie decided to teach Tansy there. Other children could join if their parents accepted shared benches and lessons. Leofric initially intended to inform the household, then corrected himself and promised invitations rather than commands. Rosalie nodded. Leofric defended his youthful complaints about scratching quills. As prince, he could have requested replacements. Instead, damaged tips gave him reasons to ask Rosalie for help. The admission carried 20-year-old mischief inside a grown man's voice. Rosalie remembered him appearing beside her desk with a damaged quill every afternoon. She had believed royal stationery was unusually fragile. Rosalie finally understood that he had ruined 12 quills deliberately. Leofric considered 12 conversations worth the damage. She tried to look offended. Laughter defeated her. Leofric admitted that his methods had been poor. Rosalie considered them unchanged, although he argued they worked eventually. Rosalie's fingers remained on the old desk. His hand settled beside hers, close but not touching. The room no longer felt like evidence of a stolen life. Children would enter tomorrow. Tansy would sit where rank once kept ordinary pupils away. Rosalie would choose what happened next. Invite them, she said. All of them. Leofric smiled. Yes, schoolmistress. The title sounded better than any court name he could have offered. Their first palace meal was meant to be private. Lord Penwick misunderstood privacy as a problem requiring witnesses. He arrived with Lady Morna, the royal household mistress, and a tutor carrying 6 books. Leofric met them outside the breakfast room. Leofric ordered the visitors away. Penwick claimed he only wished to welcome Tansy, despite carrying succession law. The tutor hid the largest book behind his back. Lady Morna defended her visit with a parcel of court dresses. Leofric pointed out that Tansy already owned clothing. Tansy appeared beneath Leofric's arm. Her hair was neatly brushed, though one ribbon had already surrendered. Tansy asked whether court dresses had pockets. Lady Morna admitted they generally did not, proving to the child that they had failed as dresses. Rosalie came to the door holding a comb. We are eating now. It was not a request. Penwick, Morna, and the tutor retreated beneath the combined authority of an alpha king and a mother who had not finished doing hair. Tansy watched them go. You both make the same face. Leofric touched his brow. What face? She attempted a severe frown. It looked like a squirrel confronting poor service. Rosalie pulled her inside before anyone could laugh. During breakfast, Tansy discovered warm chocolate. She drank half a cup, announced that village life had concealed important truths, and dipped toast into the remainder. Afterward, Leofric showed her his office. She ignored the carved desk, the maps, and the royal seal. Her attention fixed on the shallow right-hand drawer. 42 pictures lay inside. Tansy touched the first page with one finger. You really kept them. Every one. Leofric had placed the 43rd letter on top. A wooden frame waited nearby, sized for its torn edges. Tansy lifted drawings one by one. Her earlier letters contained crooked words and uncertain shapes. As the stack progressed, the figures became clearer. The black wolf remained constant. Tansy asked why he never answered. Learning that she had provided no address forced her to admit a strategic failure that delayed negotiations. Tansy asked whether he had liked the drawings before knowing she was his. Leofric had wondered whether the little wolf was warm, who taught her to draw, and why she believed he needed a friend. Tansy selected the 19th picture. It showed the crowned black wolf alone beneath a moon. A smaller wolf waited beyond the trees. Tansy had thought he looked lonely on the coins. The portraits stamped on royal coins showed Leofric in profile, stern and remote. Tansy had seen something true inside an artist's formal lie. Rosalie stood by the window. For years, she had believed she alone remembered his loneliness. Her daughter had recognized it from copper. Tansy asked him to hang the lonely wolf picture so they would remember that the forest was temporary. His eyes closed for one brief moment. When they reopened, he handed the drawing to Halbert for framing. The next days gave Tansy the pack life Rosalie could not provide alone. Valia taught her how to breathe through the ache beneath her skin. 3 palace children showed her where young wolves raced safely after lessons. The kitchen staff taught her to shape bread animals, though her first rabbit resembled a collapsed chair. Leofric attended whenever duty allowed. He brought Tansy to a short council session after removing every succession document. She sat beside him with Gerald and listened for 8 minutes. Then she raised her hand. Why is that lord using 50 words to say the roof leaks? Penwick lowered his report. Leofric looked along the table. The Crown welcomes efficient testimony. The next report required 12 words. Tansy received a honey biscuit for public service. That afternoon, Valea held a young wolf lesson in the lower garden. 6 children gathered beneath a bare oak. 2 had already shifted. 1 could produce ears, but nothing else. The youngest boy grew a tail whenever frightened, and once during pudding. Tansy sat beside Rosalie with Gerald in her lap. Valea reminded the group that every wolf arrived differently, and first shifts were not a race. Cora offered her brother's shift at 6 as evidence. Valea rejected the standard because the same boy had eaten a candle at that age. The children accepted this reasoning. Valea asked them to describe how their wolves felt. Cora said hers felt like running downhill. The boy with the unreliable tail said his felt itchy. Tansy described her wolf as someone knocking inside a cupboard. She wanted to open it, though Rosalie normally prohibited cupboards that produced mysterious knocks. This one received an exception. Valea guided the children through breathing and scent exercises. They closed their eyes and identified pine resin, wet stone, apple skin, and one biscuit hidden inside Halbert's coat. The beta stood near the garden wall. 5 children pointed toward him. Halbert removed the detected biscuit and called it private. Tansy blamed his undisciplined pocket. The exercise ended with a short run. The shifted children became wolves. The others remained human and followed the same winding path between trees. Tansy began carefully. Then Cora passed her. Competition erased caution. Tansy ran after the young wolf, red braid flying. She jumped a low branch, crawled beneath a bench, and reached the oak only 1 step behind. She bent over, laughing and breathless. Her eyes flashed brighter green. For an instant, the nails on her right hand lengthened. Rosalie saw them and stood. Leofric, watching from the garden entrance, moved at the same moment. Valea raised one calm hand. Let her notice first. Tansy looked at her fingers. The claws shortened before fear could arrive. I did something, she whispered. You did, Valea confirmed. Your wolf reached for the race. Tansy turned toward her parents. Pride shone across her face. Leofric knelt when she ran to him. She showed him her ordinary nails as if displaying treasure. Tansy showed Leofric her ordinary nails and described how they lengthened. She also emphasized that Cora nearly lost. Cora disputed the result from behind a privacy screen, but Tansy protected the useful distinction. Leofric lifted his daughter. A dangerous distinction. Rosalie joined them. She had needed effort not to rush forward. Her restraint felt strange but right. Tansy noticed that Rosalie had allowed the change. Her mother explained that she had not been alone, which was different from being stopped. Leofric met Rosalie's gaze over the child's head. They both understood the lesson belonged to more than Tansy. Near the garden doors, 3 noblewomen observed the family. Their scents carried curiosity rather than open hostility, but one spoke too loudly. The child runs like a village boy. Rosalie set her jaw. Before Leofric could turn, Tansy called across the lawn. Village boys run well. You should try it. Cora covered a laugh. The noblewoman retreated indoors. Leofric offered to intervene with the rude noblewoman. Rosalie decided the local authority had already managed it. Tansy accepted a second biscuit for public service. Rosalie watched from the gallery. Pride surprised her. So did the sight of Leofric shifting his chair closer whenever Tansy became restless. He never told the child to sit still. He gave her a blank page and let her draw while listening. That evening, Rosalie found him in the family sitting room with 3 ribbons between his teeth. Tansy sat before him, reading a book while he attempted another braid. The result had improved from nesting birds to damaged rope. Rosalie observed that he crossed the left section twice. Leofric demanded evidence around a mouthful of ribbons. She moved behind him. Her fingers separated the strands, brushing his knuckles. Heat passed through the small contact. They both became still. Tansy could not see the back of her head, but claimed the silence sounded romantic. Rosalie recommended educational silence instead. Tansy pretended to read while staring at the same illustrated cow for a full minute. The page contained a picture of a cow. Leofric's shoulders shook beneath Rosalie's hands. She finished the braid while he held the sections. Together, they made something neat. On the 6th night, snow covered the palace gardens. Tansy fell asleep beneath a table. She had spent the evening at a children's supper, where 6 young wolves built a fortress from cushions. Gerald served as commander until someone promoted a pastry. Leofric carried his daughter upstairs. Her cheek rested against his shoulder, and one small hand gripped his collar. Rosalie walked beside them with Gerald. Jam stiffened several strands of Tansy's hair. Leofric whispered a concerned question about whether children should be so adhesive. Rosalie assured him that stickiness generally indicated health. Yesterday's candle wax had been worse. They placed Tansy in bed. Rosalie loosened her shoes while Leofric arranged the blanket. He tucked Gerald under the child's arm with the care usually reserved for state relics. At the door, they turned back together. Tansy's red hair spread across the pillow. Her breathing was deep and even. The turnip remained on the washstand, now wearing a drawn face. Leofric closed the door. Neither adult moved away. The corridor lamps smelled of warm oil. Snow whispered against the narrow windows. Somewhere below, a clock struck 10. "Walk with me," Leofric asked. Rosalie followed him into the covered western gallery. Glass windows enclosed one side, protecting winter roses from the worst wind. Moonlight lay blue across tiled floors. They had walked there as lovers years earlier. The memory arrived in pieces. His hand hidden beneath her cloak, her cheek against his shoulder, a stolen kiss behind a lemon tree. Rosalie stopped beside the same tree. It had grown taller and less discreet. Leofric confessed to removing the bench where they once kissed. After Rosalie left, the furniture had seemed unbearably smug. She asked whether a bench had truly offended the Alpha King. He blamed Halbert for advising against the arrest of furniture. Her laugh slipped out. It softened the gallery's old ghosts. Leofric faced the windows. Beyond them, snow settled on dark hedges. "The night before you vanished, I planned to ask you to stay at Northwatch with me," he said. "Not as a hidden favorite, as my chosen mate." Rosalie's breath caught. They had never formed a mate bond. Their affection had been deliberate, private, and unfinished. Leofric had needed time to challenge the court. Rosalie had feared that time would always favor duty. Rosalie pointed out that he had never told her. Leofric had waited until he could promise a perfect outcome, only to learn that no such outcome existed. His fingers rested on the stone ledge. A narrow scar crossed one knuckle, earned during a search Rosalie had never seen. "When you disappeared, I believed my hesitation killed you," he continued. "Later, I learned silence can injure people without burying them." Rosalie looked down at the sleeping garden. "I should have sent word that I lived." He agreed, and the honesty stung less than easy absolution would have. Rosalie then admitted that she should have told him about Tansy. His second agreement came too quickly. She asked him to soften that judgment. Leofric explained that 7 years of imaginary arguments had formed stubborn habits. He had never won those arguments. His imagined Rosalie was relentless and once threw a vase. The real Rosalie found that wasteful. She would have chosen something less expensive. He turned toward her. Humor faded, leaving the feeling beneath it exposed. "I was furious when I learned the truth," he admitted. "Part of me remains furious. Then I see you watching every door. I see how carefully you built her life, and anger makes room for understanding." Rosalie wrapped her arms around herself. "I still fear you will wake one morning and become the crown before you become her father." Leofric confessed his matching fear. She might disappear again before asking him to stand beside her. They had finally named the 2 dangers living between them. Neither could promise the fears were foolish. They could only decide what to do when those fears returned. Rosalie proposed a rule. Neither could run, remove, protect, or sacrifice for the other without speaking first. Leofric asked whether it applied when speaking became unpleasant. "Especially then," she confirmed. He held out his hand as if sealing a treaty. Rosalie took it. His palm was warm. His fingers closed without pulling her closer. Leofric requested a second rule, proving he still expanded every treaty. He wanted her to identify the moments when he behaved like a king instead of a man. Rosalie had done so before. Her preferred term had been overdressed gatepost, reserved for occasions when he blocked doors. "I missed it," he admitted. The quiet longing in his voice unsettled her more than polished romance could. Rosalie studied the man before her. He was still difficult, controlled, and accustomed to obedience. Yet, he had spent 2 weeks accepting limits from a woman who once fled him. He had let his daughter question everything from his household habits to his nipples. The crown had survived. "Why did you come yourself?" she asked. "You could have sent Halbert to confirm the letter." "The child asked me to bring cakes." Rosalie used his name as a demand for the actual answer. His thumb moved once over her knuckles. Because if there was any chance Rosalie Arden waited at the other end, no horse in the kingdom could have carried another man fast enough. Her eyes burned. She hated crying. Tears felt like emotions escaping without travel permits. "That was almost charming," she murmured. "Almost?" Rosalie complained that another man's horse made the romantic image crowded. "I can revise." She refused the revision because he would ruin it. His smile was small and real. Rosalie stepped closer. "I loved you when I left. That was part of why I was so afraid." Leofric's grip tightened. He loved her now, he told her, and that love was why he fought the urge to turn fear into orders. There it was, no ceremony, no moonlit decree, a plain truth in a gallery smelling of snow and lemon leaves. Rosalie rested her free hand against his chest. His heart struck hard beneath her palm. Rosalie did not know whether she could return to what they had been. Leofric did not ask her to return. Their old relationship had ended badly. He wanted to discover what they could become after learning better. She looked into the green eyes her daughter had inherited. Slowly and honestly, Rosalie warned. Leofric called that combination painful, which made her laugh. Her laugh met his breath. Leofric lifted one hand to her cheek and waited. He did not close the last inch. Rosalie did. Their first kiss in 7 years was gentle enough to break her heart and warm enough to begin repairing it. His mouth remembered hers, but neither of them trusted memory alone. They learned the moment as something new. Snow brushed the windows. The old lemon tree released a faint green scent beneath the heat of the gallery. Leofric's hand moved to her waist. Rosalie caught his lower lip between hers, and his careful control faltered. He drew her closer. Then a small voice spoke from the doorway. "Gerald predicted this." Rosalie jumped away. Leofric struck the stone ledge with his elbow. Tansy stood in her nightdress, holding Gerald and the diplomatic turnip. Rosalie demanded to know why Tansy was awake. The child blamed the lonely turnip and observed that possessing a face did not guarantee emotional security. Tansy looked between them. "Are you married now?" Rosalie said they were not married. "Did the kiss fail?" Leofric coughed. Rosalie walked her daughter toward the bedrooms. "Kisses are not applications." "Then what are they?" "Something you may ask me again when you are 30. Tansy considered this cruelly distant age. "I will ask father tomorrow." Behind them, Leofric said that he respected Rosalie's timeline. Tansy sighed. "Marriage is advancing very slowly." At her bedroom door, Rosalie glanced back. Leofric still stood beside the lemon tree, one hand resting over the heart she had felt racing. His expression held hope without ownership. Rosalie smiled at him. Slow did not mean still. At breakfast, Tansy asked whether the kiss had received official approval. Rosalie explained that kisses were not bridge permits. Tansy argued that everything important at the palace required paperwork. As evidence, she confessed to moving the blue chair outside her room after Lady Morna demanded 3 signatures. Gerald had approved the theft. Leofric looked more impressed than alarmed. Rosalie pointed her knife at them and prohibited the founding of a chair-stealing dynasty. Leofric waited until she returned to her breakfast. "Concerning the original question, I intend to court your mother." Rosalie nearly spread butter across her wrist. Tansy brightened. "With flowers?" "Among other things. No birds. Mara's uncle courted someone with doves. They ruined a funeral next door." Leofric accepted the warning about funeral doves. Rosalie placed the knife down. "Do I participate in this decision?" Leofric's green eyes warmed. "I hoped you might. Your phrasing sounded like a royal announcement." "Then allow me to correct it. Rosalie Arden, may I court you slowly, honestly, and under aggressive household supervision?" Tansy raised Gerald above the table. Rosalie looked at the man she had loved, the child they had made, and the stuffed official missing one eye. Yes, she answered, but Gerald has no veto. Tansy lowered him with the assurance that he remained willing to negotiate. Leofric reached beneath the table and took Rosalie's hand. His thumb stroked her palm while he continued drinking tea with insulting calm. Her pulse betrayed her. When Rosalie reminded him about moving slowly, Leofric observed that his hand had traveled only 6 inches in 7 years. She called it ambitious. He blamed encouragement. Tansy peered beneath the table. Rosalie withdrew her hand. Eat your toast. I was checking for stolen chairs. Leofric hid a smile behind his cup. Courtship altered their days in small, satisfying ways. Leofric kissed Rosalie in quiet corridors, though quiet became difficult whenever Tansy and Gerald conducted patrols. He left winter roses on Rosalie's desk. She returned them with corrections to the spelling in his note. He began visiting her room after Tansy slept. They sat before the fire and spoke about the years between them. Rosalie told him about teaching 12 children in a room built for 8. She described Tansy's first word, which had been no, followed shortly by mine. Both royal traditions, Leofric observed. Both exhausting traditions. He told her about his first winter as king, when he slept in the council library because work gave grief fewer places to sit. He admitted that Halbert eventually removed the candles to force him into bed. Did it work? Rosalie asked. I held council at sunrise. The outcome seemed natural to Rosalie. Leofric confirmed that Halbert remained bitter. Their flirting sometimes became kissing. The kissing occasionally threatened to become something less suitable for an unlocked room. Tansy cured that problem by knocking once and entering before the sound finished. On the 8th night, she found Rosalie sitting in Leofric's lap. The king's collar was open, and Rosalie's hair had abandoned several pins. Tansy asked whether this was advanced courtship. Rosalie rose with limited dignity while Leofric blamed the cold. The child looked from the large fire to the king and wondered whether he lied better during council. Rosalie assured her that he usually did. She took her daughter back to bed while Leofric laughed into both hands. The next morning, a carpenter installed a latch on the sitting room door. Tansy gave the latch 0 points for openness in government. The palace began to feel less like a dangerous monument and more like a badly managed home. Rosalie resumed helping with lessons. She did not become a royal tutor or surrender the Willowmere school. Instead, she invited palace children into Tansy's morning class and taught them together. Noble sons shared benches with stable girls. 2 young alphas learned that rank did not improve spelling. Tansy learned that princes also reversed numbers and sometimes ate paste. Rosalie found purpose there. She was not merely Leofric's lost love or Tansy's protective mother. She remained the woman who could make 8 restless children care about a sentence. Leofric visited once and sat in the back. The children stared until Rosalie handed him a slate. Everyone participated in her class, even men who had signed laws there. The letter B, she informed him, should present no royal difficulty. He completed the exercise. Tansy inspected his work and deducted a point for proud penmanship. Outside the classroom, Leofric caught Rosalie around the waist and accused her of humiliating the crown before 8 children. She corrected the number to 9 because one pupil had hidden behind the map. Her treatment for wounded pride was humility. His preferred remedy involved her mouth. Rosalie questioned the medicine, but Leofric kissed the corner of her lips and promised to seek a second opinion that night. Rosalie walked away smiling despite herself. Her smile lasted until Lady Morna intercepted her beside the old library. The household mistress carried 3 folders and a measuring cord. She looked prepared to organize Rosalie from collar to shoes. Mistress Arden, we must discuss your position, Morna began. If you remain, the court needs a suitable title. Royal companion would be discreet until a formal bond. Rosalie leaned against the library door. I already have a title. Morna waited. Schoolmistress. That describes employment. Rosalie agreed that useful titles often described employment. Lady Morna opened the first folder. It contained invitations, wardrobe plans, and a schedule of approved appearances. Rosalie closed it. I will not spend my life appearing in rooms so strangers can confer my own sleeves. The court expects visibility. Rosalie suggested that the court could visit her classroom instead. Morna's brows rose. You intend to continue teaching? I intend to remain myself. Otherwise, Leofric would be courting an expensive coat. The king stepped from the library. He had heard enough to look entertained. Lady Morna asked the king to explain the necessities of royal partnership. Leofric remarked that royal necessities multiplied when encouraged. Rosalie could remain anything she chose. Rosalie appreciated his answer. She also heard the danger of him speaking for her while defending her choice. She touched his sleeve. I can handle this. Leofric stopped. Then he bowed slightly and stepped back. That small movement mattered. Rosalie faced Morna and established her own terms. She would attend events that served a purpose and dress suitably if the clothes had pockets. She would teach at the palace and in Willowmere. Any title must follow her life, not replace it. Morna studied her for a long moment. The household mistress had served 2 queens and survived a king who misplaced ceremonial swords. She understood firm ground when she found it. Morna rejected royal schoolmistress as a ridiculous title. Rosalie agreed. They settled on Mistress Arden until Rosalie chose otherwise. Morna removed a page from the wardrobe folder. Pockets are possible in day dresses. Formal gowns present structural concerns. Rosalie demanded 4 pockets. Morna offered 2. They settled on 3, none placed where sitting became dangerous. She left to terrify a tailor. Leofric praised her negotiation. Rosalie explained that her interests were practical. He remembered her demanding his removal from a doorway 7 years earlier. She had considered him an overdressed gatepost. He claimed he had been trying to kiss her, though Rosalie remembered a prince pretending the idea occurred by accident. He moved closer. It has occurred to me deliberately now. Rosalie placed one finger against his chest and noted that he had nearly answered for her. He had stopped, which mattered. Leofric requested a reward for progress. She offered progress itself. He accused teachers of using that phrase when they lacked honey cakes. She smiled. Come back tonight. I may locate an alternative. His eyes warmed. Does the alternative require a latch? It requires punctuality. Leofric reached for her hand, kissed her fingers, and returned to council with unusual speed. That night, he arrived 10 minutes early. Rosalie made him wait 9. When she opened the door, he leaned against the frame with carefully arranged patience. He asked whether this was discipline or education, and whether an examination followed. She pulled him inside by the front of his coat. Several. The latch clicked. For once, Tansy remained asleep. By the 9th day, their planned visit was almost over. Tansy no longer asked whether they would return to Willowmere. She asked whether the palace school could keep a desk for her after they visited the cottage. Rosalie heard the distinction. That evening, she and Leofric sat with Tansy beside the family fire. I think we can live in both places for a while, Rosalie said. School terms here, summers and part of winter in Willowmere. Tansy looked at her father. Can kings leave for summer? They can when they own fast horses and competent betas. Halbert, reading near the window, lowered his book. Competent betas were not consulted. You taught her to demand consultation, Rosalie reminded Leofric. The king inclined his head. Halbert, may we burden you during summer? No, Tansy gasped. Halbert turned a page. Fortunately, your majesty has never required permission to burden me. The child relaxed. Leofric looked offended on principle. Rosalie took his hand. Then we try it, not because it is perfectly safe, because we choose it together. Leofric lifted her fingers to his mouth. Together. Tansy began drawing 3 houses connected by a road. Gerald apparently owned the middle property. Their decision should have ended the evening peacefully. Instead, Lord Penwick requested a private audience. Rumors had already spread through the capital. The king had brought home a little girl with his eyes. Market singers had produced a terrible ballad. One version claimed Tansy arrived riding a moonbeam. That seems efficient, she said when told. Penwick did not smile. Foreign pacts are asking whether His Majesty has an acknowledged heir. Silence now creates uncertainty. Rosalie's body tightened. Leofric felt it through their joined hands. Tansy is not a political answer, he said. No, Penwick agreed. She is a child who deserves legal protection. At present, any distant Vane cousin could challenge her place in the royal family. A formal acknowledgement prevents that. The argument was reasonable. Reasonable arguments had frightened Rosalie before. What does acknowledgement require? She asked. A signed declaration before 3 witnesses, nothing more under current law. Rosalie looked at Leofric. No presentation, no crowd. No crowd, he promised. They signed the declaration the next morning in Leofric's office. Halbert, Valea, and Penwick served as witnesses. Tansy signed beneath them in purple chalk because she distrusted ink. Leofric declared her Tansy May Arden Vane, his daughter by blood and choice. Rosalie insisted that Arden remain in the name. Tansy insisted that Gerald receive no new surname because he valued independence. When the simple ceremony ended, Leofric knelt before his daughter and gave her a small iron pendant bearing the Vane wolf. Iron did not harm wolves. Silver did. Leofric had rejected the jeweler's first design for that reason and sent him back to his furnace with a lecture. Tansy touched the dark metal. Am I a princess? Only when useful, Rosalie answered. Leofric nodded. That is how I approach kingship. Tansy considered her options. Can it become useful near the kitchen? Dangerously. The legal acknowledgement should have settled the matter. It did not settle the court. 2 days later, Rosalie found her daughter's face printed on a public announcement. The artist had made Tansy look 12, solemn and strangely square. Above the portrait, black letters proclaimed the moon acclamation of the royal heir. The event would take place in 6 days before the full court. Rosalie read the page outside the palace bakery. Warm sugar and yeast filled the passage. Trays clattered beyond the open door. The pleasant smells made her anger feel almost festive. Lady Morna approached with fabric samples and opinions about ceremonial cloaks. She favored white fur, although gold trim looked brighter in formal portraits. Rosalie demanded to know who approved the event. Morna's confident scent shifted as she named His Majesty, and the council's desire to reassure the people. Leofric had approved only a private legal acknowledgement. The difference sharpened Rosalie's anger. Rosalie folded the notice once, then again. By the 4th fold, the royal heir had become a tiny square with one furious eye. Where is Leofric? The king was in the Eastern Audience Hall receiving 2 visiting alphas. Rosalie waited in his private office because interrupting diplomacy with murder looked untidy. She paced between the desk and the window. Old instinct urged her toward the family rooms. Pack quickly. Leave before explanations became guards. Her mind supplied the contents of a travel bag with practiced speed. 2 dresses for Tansy. Gerald. Dried food. Coin. The blue cloak. Rosalie reached the door. Then she remembered the rule made in the winter gallery. No running without speaking first. She turned back. Remaining in the room felt harder than crossing any border had. Leofric entered 20 minutes later. He smiled when he saw her, then noticed the crushed announcement on his desk. Rosalie, tell me why our daughter is being presented to the full court. His face changed. Leofric had approved a brief balcony appearance meant to confirm the declaration. He had not seen the planned procession, vows, or gathering of every pack delegation. Leofric opened the notice. His jaw tightened as he read. Penwick expanded it. After you opened the door. Leofric accepted his share of the fault. Again, no easy defense. It did not reduce her anger. Rosalie reminded him of his promise. Leofric had believed the legal acknowledgement changed what was necessary, but admitted he should have spoken with her. You believed, You decided. Then other people built a throne around our child. Leofric moved behind the desk, but did not sit. The announcement will be withdrawn. That does not undo what happened. No. Snowmelt struck the windows in quick drops. Below, the courtyard rang with hammers as workers assembled a platform no one had requested. Rosalie heard each blow like an approaching footstep. She confessed that before he entered, she had packed a travel bag in her head. Leofric went pale beneath his winter-brown skin. But you stayed. I stayed because I made a promise. You made one too. Leofric admitted that he had broken his promise. The plain admission left nowhere for the argument to hide. Leofric came around the desk. He stopped several feet away. Leofric had seen a legal threat and reacted as king. He had called speed protection, the same excuse he used at Northwatch. Rosalie's anger loosened enough to reveal hurt. I need her father to notice when the king is repeating himself. He quietly agreed. He looked at the crumpled portrait. Leofric admitted that pride and fear had become tangled. Secrecy once cost him 7 years. Part of him believed public recognition could prevent another loss. Rosalie understood the fear. Understanding did not make the choice acceptable. You cannot display a person, so she cannot disappear. I know. Rosalie questioned whether he truly understood. Leofric met her gaze. I am learning more slowly than I would prefer. She wanted to reach for him. She also wanted him to feel the distance his decision created. Rosalie required him to cancel the event himself, openly and without blaming Penwick. Every invited pack must hear that Tansy was a child, not proof of stability. Leofric agreed, including her demand that they ask Tansy what she wanted next. Rosalie picked up the announcement. Tonight, we ask together. She left without kissing him. Leofric watched the door close. The absence of that small affection hurt with remarkable precision. He had faced armed challengers with less dread than the thought of breakfast without her hand beneath the table. The king summoned Penwick. The old lord arrived carrying an event schedule, 3 seating plans, and the confidence of a man who expected gratitude. Leofric placed the announcement before him. Cancel this. Penwick protested that invitations had gone to every allied pack, and the platform was half built. Leofric ordered new messages and the removal of the completed half. Then Penwick revealed the existence of 800 custard tarts. Leofric considered this genuine complication. He initially told Penwick to keep them, then sent them to lower city schools. The relief died. Penwick insisted the court required visible assurance of succession. Leofric pointed to the signed declaration and the alarming tendency of little ceremonies to become 800 tarts. Penwick glanced at his papers. 792. The baker allowed for breakage. Leofric leaned both hands on the desk. My daughter will not perform comfort for nervous adults. Cancel it. The command carried the full weight of the Alpha King. Penwick bowed. At supper, Leofric and Rosalie explained the situation to Tansy. The child listened while feeding peas to Gerald. She did not appear surprised. Tansy revealed that Lady Morna had measured her for a cloak the previous day. She had mistaken the process for a curtain emergency. Leofric closed his eyes briefly. I am sorry. I agreed to an event without asking you. It became much larger. I have canceled it. Tansy pushed 1 pea into Gerald's cloth mouth. Her only immediate concern was whether the canceled event included a crown. Leofric described it as a ceremonial circlet, which she correctly identified as a small crown. She thought about this. Could I wear it for 5 minutes without the lords? Rosalie's anger nearly gave way to laughter. We can arrange that. Tansy approved canceling the lords while keeping the crown and tarts. Learning that the schools would receive the pastries felt like betrayal. She negotiated 7 tarts for administrative purposes. They shook hands across the table. The conversation seemed easier than either parent expected. Tansy returned to her peas. Rosalie mistook that quick recovery for peace. She did not see the child's gaze drift toward the iron pendant at her throat. Tansy had heard more than they knew. That morning, two maids had whispered that some nobles doubted a child who had never shifted. A real royal wolf should appear beneath the full moon, one had claimed. Tansy understood that the event was cancelled. She did not understand whether doubt had been cancelled with it. The next morning, Tansy requested a book about royal wolves. The librarian gave her 3. By noon, she was walking through the family rooms with a volume balanced on her head. Gerald rode beneath her dress sash like an injured passenger. Rosalie found her turning slow circles near the fireplace. When questioned, Tansy claimed she was improving her posture. The book slid over her nose and landed on Gerald, whose condition now seemed less certain. The child rescued him and insisted that princesses should walk without wobbling. Rosalie argued that everyone with bones wobbled. Lady Morna merely frightened the floor into cooperation. Tansy smiled, but only briefly. Rosalie noticed the effort behind her daughter's game. She sat on the rug and patted the space beside her. Rosalie told her she did not need to prove she was a princess. Tansy's quick claim that she knew meant the opposite. No one had questioned her directly, but she had heard enough. Rosalie waited. Children often filled silence when adults respected it. Tansy examined one cloth paw. Would father still want me if I am bad at being royal? Pain pierced Rosalie's anger and reached something deeper. Rosalie reminded her that Leofric wanted her when she existed only inside 42 anonymous pictures. Tansy called pictures easy, despite the one showing him losing his trousers in a river. Rosalie revealed that he framed that artistic exploration. Tansy finally looked at her. Really? Halbert placed it behind 2 landscapes, but yes. The child immediately asked whether the trousers looked accurate. Rosalie denied all relevant knowledge. Tansy's green eyes narrowed with inherited suspicion. Rosalie redirected. Your father loves you. Nothing you do beneath the moon will make you more his daughter. But the lords want to see my wolf. There it was. Rosalie asked who had spoken. Tansy described the maids without knowing their names. They were repeating foolish gossip, Rosalie said. Adults sometimes pass nonsense between them because carrying it alone feels embarrassing. Is that why councils exist? Rosalie admitted that councils often served that purpose. Tansy rested her head against Rosalie's shoulder. For several minutes, they sat before the fire while Gerald recovered from literature. Rosalie believed the problem had been named. She did not know Tansy had already formed a plan. Leofric spent the day undoing the acclamation. 6 delegations were already traveling. Turning them away at the gates would create more rumors than the cancelled event. He decided to receive them and explain the change himself. He sent every ceremonial worker home with full pay. The half-built platform became benches for the lower garden. The white fur intended for Tansy's cloak went back to the northern trader. The ceremonial circlet remained in his office. It was made from gold, never silver, with tiny iron leaves around its rim. He imagined it on Tansy's unruly hair and understood why pride had blinded him. He placed it in a plain wooden box. Rosalie entered without knocking. Their new latch protected courtship, not arguments. She heard maids say the lords doubt her because she has not shifted. Leofric rose. Who? That is the king's question. Ask the father's question first. He stopped. The correction hurt because it was deserved. Leofric first asked whether Tansy was frightened. Rosalie described the books balanced on her head, which counted as despair for their daughter. Leofric left the desk and offered to speak with her. We will. Together, he agreed. Rosalie noticed the dismantled schedules in the fire basket. A list of ceremonial vows had been torn cleanly through the middle. The visiting alphas would arrive tomorrow. Leofric intended to explain publicly that Tansy owed them no display. He assured Rosalie that cancellation would not weaken the child's legal position. Penwick had admitted that after losing control of the tarts. Rosalie's mouth twitched. A brutal interrogation. He broke before Custard reached the schools. The space between them remained careful. Leofric apologized, not because Rosalie nearly left, but because he gave her reason to consider it. She apologized for turning fear into a silent travel plan. He reminded her that she stayed. Rosalie warned him not to make angry endurance sound saintly. His gaze moved over her face. I find your anger attractive at inconvenient times. Warmth slipped beneath her ribs despite the remaining hurt. She questioned his survival instinct. Leofric blamed his optimistic wolf, who believed her glare usually preceded kissing and had waited 7 years to test the theory. Rosalie stepped close enough to straighten his collar. She did not kiss him. Keep learning, she said. Leofric caught her hand and pressed his mouth to her wrist. Aggressively. That evening, they went to Tansy's room. The blue chair stood empty. The posture book lay on the rug. Gerald was gone. The window was open. Cold air pushed the curtains inward. A length of knotted bedding hung over the sill and reached less than halfway to the ground. Rosalie's heart stopped. Leofric crossed the room in 2 strides. He touched the knots, then leaned outside. She did not use it, he said. No fresh scent on the sill. Rosalie forced herself to breathe. They searched the adjoining rooms. A narrow servant door stood open behind the wardrobe. Tansy had discovered a back stair during her campaign to move the blue chair. Her scent led downward. Leofric called the guards but forbade bells. Panic would frighten the child and turn a search into spectacle. Rosalie followed the faint trail through the lower gallery. It smelled of Tansy's lavender soap, wool, and the wild green note of a young wolf nearing change. The trail crossed the winter garden and entered the old moon court. They found Tansy behind a hedge. She wore a table runner as a ceremonial cloak. Gerald had been placed on a stone bench with the iron pendant around his neck. 7 stolen custard tarts formed a circle on the ground. Tansy stood in the middle, barefoot and shivering. I almost had it, she told them. Rosalie dropped to her knees and wrapped the child in her cloak. Relief made her hands clumsy. You almost had frozen toes. I was calling my wolf. Leofric crouched on the other side. He touched Tansy's cold cheek. Leofric asked why she had attempted it alone. The child's brave expression cracked. If I shift before the alphas arrive, they will know I am real. Then you can keep me. Leofric's face folded around pain. Tansy, look at me, she did. I kept every drawing when I did not know your face. I crossed the kingdom when I learned your name. I loved you before you called me father. Nothing the court sees can give me permission to keep loving you. Tears slid down Tansy's cheeks. She feared she might be a very small wolf. Leofric promised to remain a very large father beside her. Falling over worried Tansy too, but Rosalie noted that she had fallen while human yesterday, and everyone recovered. Tansy blamed the rug. Leofric accepted its reputation for dishonesty. The child leaned into both of them. Her skin was warmer than it should have been, despite the cold. A tremor passed along her spine. Leofric smelled the change first. Her wolf is close. Rosalie's fear rose. Tansy felt it and began to shake harder. Rosalie closed her eyes. She could not ask her daughter to trust a process while offering only terror. She loosened her grip. Rosalie calmly decided they would not continue that night. Tansy's wolf had answered fear. They would invite her again when the child felt safe. Leofric predicted eventual cooperation because the wolf shared Tansy's personality. Tansy gave a watery laugh. He lifted her into his arms. Rosalie gathered Gerald and the least damaged tart. Tansy worried about the pastry circle. Leofric promised the guards would destroy the evidence. From beyond the hedge, Halbert's voice emerged. With tea, Your Majesty? Use whatever resources are required. The guards approached the custard with disciplined gratitude. Back in Tansy's room, Rosalie warmed her feet while Leofric brushed leaves from the table runner cloak. No one scolded her for leaving. Consequences could wait until fear no longer filled the room. Tansy fell asleep, holding one parent's hand in each of hers. Leofric sat on the floor beside Rosalie. Their shoulders touched beneath the edge of the mattress. Leofric whispered that he had caused the disaster. Rosalie divided blame among the court, the maids, and Tansy's imagination. Several chairs existed at that table, though Leofric believed his was largest. Rosalie rested her head against him and asked him to do something useful while sitting there. Tomorrow, they agreed. The visiting alphas entered the great hall beneath banners prepared for a celebration. There was no platform, no procession, and no child. Leofric stood alone at the foot of his throne. Rosalie watched from a side gallery where the court could see her. She had chosen to attend, but Tansy remained upstairs with Valia and 6 breakfast pastries. Penwick read the legal declaration, his voice carried beneath the high rafters. When he finished, Leofric faced the gathered leaders. "Tansy May Arden Vane is my daughter," he said. "The law recognizes her. I recognize her. Neither fact requires a child to stand beneath your examination." Murmurs moved across the hall. An Eastern alpha raised one hand. "Your Majesty, tradition calls for the heir's wolf to be witnessed." "Show me the law." The man looked toward Penwick. Penwick became interested in the declaration's lower margin. "There is no law," Leofric continued. "There is a habit. Habits do not gain wisdom merely by surviving their creators." Rosalie felt the words settle through the room. Leofric could have blamed his counsel. Instead, he named his own error. "I approved this gathering because I confused public possession with protection. My daughter owes the crown her honesty when she is grown enough to serve it. She does not owe the court a performance of her body." No one challenged him. Rosalie had once dreamed of hearing Leofric defy his court for her. In those old fantasies, he overturned a council table, declared eternal love, and solved every danger before supper. Reality was quieter and far more difficult. He had not defeated fear. He had admitted it before witnesses. He had not promised perfect safety. He had surrendered control of a ceremony designed to display his authority. The distinction mattered. Rosalie also recognized her own part in the moment. She had remained inside his office while anger demanded flight. She had told him exactly what repair required, then trusted him to act without supervising every breath. Staying no longer meant submitting. Leaving no longer represented her only form of power. She could stand in the gallery, visible to every doubtful noble, because visibility was her choice. She wore a plain green dress with 3 practical pockets. One held Tansy's spare ribbon. Another held chalk. The third contained a honey biscuit that might become necessary during royal emergencies. Lady Morna noticed the pockets from across the hall and gave one restrained nod. Rosalie returned it. Below, Leofric raised his gaze to the gallery. He did not ask whether his speech had pleased her. He simply let her see that he remembered who had taught him its lesson. Rosalie placed one hand over the railing and nodded once. His shoulders eased. The Eastern Alpha bowed first. Others followed. Lord Penwick approached with a schedule. "What shall we do with 200 invited guests?" The king turned to the windows. Snow had melted from the lower city roofs. Children crowded outside the palace gates, waiting for a glimpse of the promised celebration. "Open the gardens," he ordered. "Feed them." Penwick paled. The lower city schools already received the tarts. "Then this gathering may survive on bread. Without custard?" Leofric called survival without custard an act of bravery. Within an hour, the formal acclamation became a winter garden feast. Musicians played dancing tunes instead of ceremonial hymns. Visiting alphas found themselves sharing benches with school teachers and bakers. Children climbed the half-platform's new garden seats. Tansy watched from the upper window. She wore the small golden circlet for exactly 5 minutes. Then it pinched her hair, so Gerald wore it instead. "Do I have to go down?" she asked. Rosalie stood behind her. "No." "Could I go down for pudding?" "Yes." Tansy considered the crowd. "Can father come get me?" Leofric arrived before Rosalie could send a servant. He had been waiting beyond the door, respecting Tansy's choice while remaining close. She took his hand. The 3 of them descended through a private stair. No herald announced them, no one demanded a shift. When Tansy entered the garden, children noticed the circlet on Gerald and bowed to him. The stuffed wolf received his first public acclaim. Tansy laughed so hard that she forgot to be nervous. Leofric carried her through the busiest section. Rosalie walked at his side. Adults watched them, but the watching no longer controlled the moment. Near the pudding table, the Eastern Alpha approached. Tansy stiffened. The man bowed to her. Princess. She glanced at Gerald. He has the crown. The Alpha corrected his bow toward the stuffed wolf. Chancellor, he said gravely. Tansy decided she liked him. The feast continued into late afternoon. Tansy raced palace children between bare rose arches. Leofric lost a game involving hoops because he misunderstood rules everyone else invented while running. Rosalie found him beside the fountain, breathing hard and holding a broken ribbon. 9 packs, she remarked, defeated by 5 children and a hoop. They changed the finish line. Rosalie returned his own phrase about effective government. Leofric caught her waist and pulled her behind the stone fountain. Mockery violates the courtship treaty. Show me the clause. It is written here. He kissed her. Rosalie kissed him back until cold stone pressed against her shoulders and the feast blurred into music and wood smoke. When he lifted his head, his eyes had darkened. You look pleased with your legal argument, she whispered. I intend to cite it frequently. Rosalie warned that the court might object. Leofric noted that the court was eating pudding, leaving them time. She kissed him again, shorter but no less promising. You did well today, Rosalie said. I made the mistake first. Rosalie would have admired growth more easily if it began before mistakes. Unfortunately, both humans and wolves remained inconvenient. Did you just admire me? Rosalie instructed him not to become distracted. Leofric admitted that distraction had already won. Tansy's voice rose beyond the fountain. I can see father's boots. Rosalie stepped away. Your daughter has inherited your talent for surveillance. Leofric straightened his coat. Our daughter. The words no longer frightened her. That night, the full moon rose above the eastern ridge. Tansy woke from sleep with a cry. Rosalie reached her first. The child knelt among twisted blankets, trembling as moonlight crossed the bed. It hurts, she gasped. The wild green scent filled the room. This was not fear calling the wolf. The change had arrived on its own. Leofric entered with Valea close behind. He wore no coat, only a loose shirt and trousers. His hair had not seen a comb. The private clearing, Valea said. She needs earth beneath her. Leofric carried Tansy through the sleeping palace. Rosalie held her hand the entire way. They entered the small grove behind the western wall. Halbert closed the gate, keeping everyone else away. Only 5 people attended. Tansy, her parents, Valea, and Gerald. Moonlight silvered the frost. Pine branches breathed above them. The air smelled clean and cold, with wood smoke drifting from distant chimneys. Valea spread blankets on the ground. Your wolf knows the way, she reminded Tansy. Let her come. Tansy clung to Rosalie's hand. What if she is angry? Then she fits the family, Rosalie said. Leofric knelt on the child's other side. What if she is hungry? Also the family, Tansy managed. Another tremor moved through her. Her fingers tightened. Rosalie wanted to take the pain into her own body. She could not. Protection did not mean preventing every hard thing. It meant remaining while someone faced it. I am here, she said. So am I, Leofric added. Tansy looked from one to the other, then she released both their hands. The shift began. First changes were never elegant. Her spine bowed. Limbs shortened, then lengthened differently. Red hair vanished beneath fur the color of moonlit ash. Tansy made one startled yelp. Rosalie's wolf pressed close inside her, answering with love rather than alarm. Moments later, a small silver-gray wolf stood on the blanket. She was not medium. She was tiny. Her paws looked 1 size too large. Her ears looked 2 sizes too large. Her green eyes looked enormous. Tansy stared at her front feet. She lifted one paw, lost track of the other 3, and tipped sideways into Gerald. The stuffed wolf broke her fall with professional resignation. Leofric made a strangled sound. Rosalie studied his face. Tears shone in his eyes, though his mouth fought a smile. The little wolf stood again. She tried to howl. A high squeak emerged. Valea coughed into her shawl. Tansy tried once more. The second sound resembled a kettle asking a question. Leofric passed his clothes to Valea and moved behind a broad pine. The enormous black wolf emerged from the other side, blocking half the moon. He lowered his head until their noses touched. Tansy froze. Then her tail began moving. It moved faster. Her entire back half joined the effort. She bounced forward, collided with Leofric's muzzle, and rolled beneath his chin. The king lay down around her, black fur curved against silver gray. Tansy tucked herself beneath his throat with the certainty of a child returning somewhere she had never physically been. Valea raised a spare blanket while Rosalie changed. A moment later, the brown wolf joined them. Her wolf was warm brown, smaller than Leofric and larger than their daughter. Tansy crawled from beneath the black wolf and bumped her nose against Rosalie's. For 7 years, Rosalie had run alone beneath the moon. She had listened to her own paws strike empty ground and called the silence safety. Now Tansy stumbled between both parents. Leofric's dark flank guarded one side. Rosalie guarded the other. The little wolf attempted another howl. This one remained a squeak. Leofric lifted his muzzle and gave a low, gentle call. Rosalie joined him. Their voices rose through the pines, strong without being loud. Tansy tried a third time. Her small note wavered between theirs. It was thin, imperfect, and entirely hers. No court witnessed it. No law required it. Her family heard. That was enough. Tansy woke the next morning inside Leofric's shirt. After shifting back, she had refused every blanket except the one closest to her father. Leofric removed his shirt and wrapped her in it before carrying her upstairs. Now only her head and toes were visible. "I was a small wolf," she announced. Rosalie sat beside the bed. "A magnificent small wolf." "Father promised large support." Leofric entered carrying breakfast. "The support has brought porridge." Tansy eyed the bowl. "Magnificent wolves need honey. Magnificent wolves negotiated for 7 tarts yesterday. That was before transformation." He added a spoonful of honey. Rosalie gave him a dry look. Firm royal leadership. "I am vulnerable to post-shift diplomacy." Tansy ate 3 bites, then fell asleep with the spoon upright in her hand. Leofric removed it carefully. He sat beside Rosalie while morning light spread across the room. Neither spoke for a while. The silence was not empty. It contained Tansy's breathing, birds on the roof, and the distant movement of a palace beginning its day. Leofric rested his hand over Rosalie's. "Stay," he said. She looked at him. "Not because the palace is safer," he continued. "Not because Tansy shifted here. Stay because we chose a life in both places, and this is one of them." Rosalie turned her palm beneath his. "I am staying." Relief moved through his face. "I also intend to argue with you again," she warned. "I included that in my hopes." Rosalie considered his hopes unusual. Leofric blamed the proposal written in purple crayon for adapting his standards. Rosalie leaned close. "Am I still being courted?" His gaze dropped to her mouth, relentlessly. "Quietly, I hope." The latch is installed. She kissed him before his confidence became unbearable. Life did not become simple after Tansy's first shift. It became shared. They returned to Willowmere for spring planting. Leofric ruled from the repaired hunting lodge 3 days each week, while messengers learned to bring turnips for the bridge goat. Rosalie continued teaching. Tansy told every classmate she had become a wolf and omitted the part where her howl resembled cookware. Her later shifts became easier, although Leofric's attempts at bathing a wet wolf remained a threat to ceilings. Their courtship lasted through summer. Leofric proposed beside the stone bridge, without a crown or any promise of perfect safety. He offered truth before decisions, apologies after mistakes, 2 homes, 1 difficult goat, and partnership instead of protection. Rosalie had once loved him through uncertainty. Now she loved him through evidence. She accepted on the condition that he learn to wash his own wolf. Tansy witnessed the agreement with Gerald in a basket of honey cakes. She had been forbidden to negotiate, so she merely announced that the cakes made the answer binding. The wedding took place in early autumn, 1 year after Tansy's proposal. They chose the Willowmere Meadow instead of the Great Hall. Villagers stood beside pack leaders. Palace children shared a bench with Rosalie's pupils and behaved equally badly. No raised platform separated the royal family from their guests. Tansy wore a red dress with 4 pockets. Gerald occupied the largest. She carried the rings in a wooden box after swearing not to revise the vows. Leofric waited beside the stone bridge in a dark formal coat. His crown remained at the palace. When Rosalie approached, his expression lost every trace of kingly distance. She wore deep green, the color of her old-school dress made richer. Lavender from the cottage garden threaded through her hair. Leofric took her hands. They promised to speak before choosing for each other. They promised to share fear before turning it into walls. They promised to keep 2 homes until their family wanted something different. Then Tansy opened the ring box. It was empty. The meadow went silent. Tansy looked into Gerald's pocket. She checked all 4 of her own. Her face became steadily more alarmed. "I secured them," she whispered. Rosalie crouched beside her. "Where?" "Somewhere safer than the box." Leofric looked toward Halbert. The beta looked toward the bridge goat, which had attended without invitation. The goat chewed a ribbon. "Not the goat," Tansy insisted. "I learned from the turnip." She squeezed Gerald. Something clicked inside him. Tansy's eyes widened. Lady Morna produced a small sewing knife. Because silver harmed wolves, every palace tool used near shifting families was iron or steel. She opened a few careful stitches in Gerald's back. Both rings emerged from his stuffing. "I gave him responsibility," Tansy explained. Leofric accepted his ring. "He has now carried the proposal, the crown, and the wedding. He is experienced." Rosalie laughed until her eyes watered. The guests joined her, and the tension broke across the meadow like sunlight. Leofric slid the ring onto her finger. "Still yes? Ask me after Gerald survives the repair." Lady Morna held up the stuffed wolf. "He will recover." "Then yes." Rosalie placed Leofric's ring. He kissed her while the stream hurried beneath the little bridge and autumn leaves turned above them. This time Tansy allowed the kiss to continue. She counted quietly to 12. "That is enough," she declared. Leofric lifted his head. "You are not authorized to regulate marital kissing. Gerald is." The repaired stuffed wolf stared from Lady Morna's hands with one unquestionable button eye. Rosalie curled her fingers into her husband's collar. "I believe the king should appeal." "Privately?" "Relentlessly." His smile promised thorough legal action. The feast began around them. Honey cakes appeared beside onion pies. Children raced along the meadow while visiting alphas discovered that village tables had no seating hierarchy. Rosalie watched her family beneath the rising moon. Home was not the place where nothing dangerous could enter. It was where fear was spoken, choices were shared, and nobody had to run alone. Later, Tansy placed a new picture in the drawer of Leofric's traveling desk. It showed 3 wolves beside a cottage and a palace connected by one crooked road. Gerald stood on the bridge wearing a crown. The goat had been given its own turnip field. At the bottom, Tansy had written one final report. "Dear Wolf King, you may keep my mother. Your house training is improving." Leofric carried the picture to Rosalie. She read it in their candlelit room while he stood behind her, one arm around her waist. "Improving is not the same as complete," Rosalie said. "Then you must continue supervising me." Rosalie warned that continued supervision sounded exhausting. His mouth brushed the curve beneath her ear. He had several ideas for making the work pleasant. Rosalie turned in his arms. She kissed the Alpha King, who had finally learned that love was not possession, silence, or perfect safety. It was a question asked honestly. It was an answer freely given. Behind the adjoining wall, Tansy called that she could still hear them flirting. Leofric rested his forehead against Rosalie's and raised his voice. Gerald approved it. There was a thoughtful pause. Then proceed, Tansy called back. Rosalie laughed against her husband's mouth. For once, the Wolf King followed instructions perfectly. Thank you for listening to Moonlit Romance Tales. I hope this story brought you a little laughter, warmth, and a peaceful moment in a world that can sometimes feel heavy. If you enjoyed this tale, please like, subscribe, and share it to spread more happiness. I'll see you in the next one.